Hello, good day. I am Professor Kivo Sia Casimiro. Thanks for Instabright Publication for inviting me again to speak in front of so many educators and administrators. So again, this is a type of topic wherein it's connected to management and how are you going to implement it or execute it through this pandemic. It is also connected to teachers whom are going to apply different approaches during the implementation of classes on August 24, 2020. What I'm going to tackle about is transition of education during these days as a possible tool of learning or as a possible tool for a better education these days. Okay, first, why did I use transitional education rather than being specific with the tools that are presented and proposed these days, which are blended approach, flipped approach, face to face, or any other approaches that have been mentioned by different educational agencies? I was able to come up with such term, transitional education, because I have patterned it with the suggestions of the parents, the needs of the students, the need of the country, and the status of our technology in the Philippines. So first, if we're going to tackle about transitional education, we have to talk about the factors to consider before opening of classes. You will not open classes if you haven't considered the following factors that I'm going to consider or that I'm going to tell to you. Anyway, may I just tell you that this talk is going to be shorter than the usual talk that I had with you because I am being specific or I will be specifying all the important things and I will put into a concise matter wherein people or audience will better understand the topics that I'm going to talk about. First, the first question in the factors to consider before opening of classes is what type of learning modality should we use? There are different learning modalities that have been exposed and that have been proposed these days. Let me mention it first. The face-to-face, the blended, the flipped, and what I am going to introduce to you is there's a transitional education or transitional modality of learning. First, blended, I mentioned that last time during my talk. So as with the flip approach is the inverted kind of teaching, and I do not suggest blended learning to those schools who are not actually uh, equipped with so much of technology, and the parents are also not agreeing with the plans that they are giving. I also do not recommend first flip approach because inverted learning is not so much of practice these days in basic education. In higher education institutions maybe. Let me introduce to you transitional approach or transitional learning. This is, for example, you are going to have first online classes during the first quarter. Why? Parents would always ask for the safety of the students. Parents would always require you to provide health and safety precautions for their children, and they are thinking that if we're going to have a face-to-face, which will fall on the face-to-face learning itself, so as with the blended learning itself, there is always a face-to-face approach of out of the two approaches that I have mentioned. But in the transitional approach, whether or not it's first 3 months, first quarter, first semester, or even one whole year, you're going to employ the transitional approach wherein online modality would be used. Why? It's for the safety of the students. It will be very hard for the teachers, of course, if there will be no proper training. So how did it become transitional? If the situation relaxes already, or if the number of COVID-19 patients went down already, and if the government tells you that we are near to being cured or having the vaccine, we can now shift to blended learning from online to blended. Now, what if the situation is already back to normal? We can have face to face classes. We will not be afraid talking to each other and giving a handshake to anyone because vaccine is there already. That's the time that we can shift from transitional to blended to regular. So that is the paradigm of having a transitional education, from transitional to blended to regular. Now, let me tell you the other factor, school preparedness, how prepared the school is. We should always consider how prepared the school is. If you have seen the Facebook page of Department of Education, there are lots of parents who are complaining because of the modality of learning being offered both in public and private school. So these are the factors under school preparedness that we have to consider under the transitional education. First, the lessons that you are going to give or the lessons of the teacher should be first planned, should be first critiqued by the principal or through the academic council of the institution, so as with the guidelines given by the experts. So the lessons should be aligned with the curriculum instructional guides that will be provided by the teachers or will be made by the teachers. It should be aligned with the new normal thing. Next, the training of the teachers. If we go to talk about the training of the teachers, we should be teaching them the all approaches possible. Approach that is applicable to blended, approach that is applicable to online only, full-fledged home-based learning. So as with the traditional learning that we had, which is face-to-face. Uh-huh. Another is the parents and students orientation. As I've mentioned through the last seminar that I had, we cannot convince the parents to let their students enroll if we're not going to make them understand. So on this seminar or webinar, how are we going to make them understand? Of course, through the orientation. There are two possible types of orientation that we can employ to parents and students. Of course, first is online. But there are factors to be considered because not all parents are, very knowledgeable in using the application like Zoom or Facebook video room or video conferencing room or any type of application which employs the online video conferencing. Now, what if that is not possible for the parents of a certain institution? What we're going to do is to shift to another transitional type of meeting, which is by batch meeting. Like for example, each of the advisor will be setting a schedule coming from the class that they have into their rooms. Like for example, the advisor has 30 students. You're going to divide it 8 to 9, 10 parents, 9 to 10, 10 parents, 10 to 11, 10 parents. So we practice social distancing. We inform the parents about it. We may be convincing the parents on the modality that we are presenting. We may be giving them hopes that the students will learn. At the same time, they will be safe. Next is the awareness of the learning continuity plan. Aside from the orientation that we're going to conduct, of course, we have to make the community aware of what learning continuity plan that the school is using. How are we going to make them aware? First is through social media or FB pages. May I just tell you that we cannot control the comments or the negative comments that will be put in the social media post that you're going to make in the FB page of the institution. Next is text blast. But this is very hard because you need to exert effort. A certain teacher needs to exert effort, or whoever that is in charge on the text blast, because you're going to send a certain message to the parents. For example, the teacher has 40 parents and you're going to send a simple text messages containing all the information needed, and what if the parents replied to the message. Teacher should be briefed about it through the information needed. It is easier for the parents to read text these days rather than involving themselves in the social media, most especially in public schools, because parents are not well off. So it's easier for them to read texts. Now, of course, there are some parents that were immersed in the Facebook or in the social media thing. So it's still a question that we need to answer. Next is through website. This is most applicable for private schools, most especially if the students there are well off, like students coming from Brent International School, wherein you can either utilize FB page or website. Next is the platforms of information. Of course, you should make it clear. You should make it clear that these are the available platforms of communication or information wherein the parents and students can involve themselves into. The easiest way now, it's either text or SMS or Facebook. Okay? Or you can either create group chat, having the advisors talking to the parents, because of course the principal or the administrator of the school cannot text all the parents of the institution, or they can either not uh, send information through a certain GC having all the parents of it. That's why the principal or the administrators needs help coming from the teachers or the advisors of the students. Next question is, how prepared are we to the shifting that will happen to the present educational landscape? First is the continuity of lesson. It will be the first problem that we're going to see. How are we going to continue if we're going to use transitional mode of learning? Like, for example, we are on the full online classes, then suddenly the situation relaxes, and we are going to shift on a blended learning. Now, it should be written on your curriculum instructional guide or syllabus the plans, or in how will it shift from transitional or fully online to blended to regular. It should be well written and well defined, so it would be easier for the teachers, to parents, and to all the stakeholders of the institution. That's why there will be an orientation for the parents, there will be an orientation for the students, so as with the teachers. And that is most important, because you cannot implement well the learnings that the students should get if the teachers are not well trained. And to that learnings that they are going to share, of course, the administrators or or the principals or the owner of the school should invest on the learnings that the teacher should have, or the trainings that the teacher should have. Next is the approaches of the teachers. I have mentioned it a while ago. All approaches should be possible for whatever type of learning modality that the institution has to use. Next, the first problem that you're going to encounter is class schedule. We're not going to have a problem on class schedule if we are still on the online modality. What if we are already in the online modality and we have shifted suddenly into a blended learning? There must always be a planned schedule out of that transitional learning that you're going to employ. All documents that should be ready, the class schedule, the syllabus, the subjects that the teachers will still teach. If there's a shift of learning, all things must be prepared, and it will happen through in-service training and planning of the administrators. It should be well defined. Okay? Class schedule for blended learning is not like that of a normal, of course. I'm giving you an example. Like, for example, there is batch A and batch B. MWF batch A is in the classroom. MWF batch B is having an online class. Now, TTHS, there will going to be a shift. TTHS batch B is in the classrooms. Batch A is being employed in the online modality. So there is a continuity of learning through the blended schedule that you have created. Next, the facilities needed for online learning. What you need to invest into is the kind of learning materials that you're going to use. Because physical facilities in schools are less needed these days. So whenever we have shifted from online to blended and blended to regular, by the time comes that the regular is already regular, that's the time that we can actually invest into facilities, because it will be somehow near to the word useless if we're going to employ it now, because no students will use it. Next, financial capacity. On these trying times, you can actually invest to the trainings of the teachers and to the learning materials, because there will be budgets that we used to use during the regular class or during the previous normal that we will not be able to use because we're not going to have the facilities, the books, so we can actually use it to trainings of teachers, learning materials, so as in investing with technology that the students can use. Next is benefits. We're now on the benefits of the transitional learning for the parents and students. Next, under it is lesser budget consumption. That is the very great thing that we're going to first encounter in the benefits of the transitional learning. On the part of the school, of course, they're not going to spend so much investing in the facilities and others. On the part of the on the part of the parents, it will be lesser in their budget because, of course, in the fair, the students will not travel from home to school and from school to home. Another is the food or the money that they used to bring for baon. They're not going to use it anymore. Next, it's safer because they're not going to travel. There will be no contact, both teacher and students, administrator, teachers, administrator, students. They can anytime go back to the lesson if they wish to. Why? If the teacher had sent a taped video to the certain application that they're going to use, like for example, Messenger, the students can anytime go back whenever they do not understand the lesson on the first sitting. Like for example, I first created a video for 20-minute or 30-minute kind of lesson or even 1 hour kind of lesson, and the student tried to watch it once, and there are certain instances wherein the students did not understand some parts of the topic. The students can anytime go back, reread, or re-understand. Another, it's not only tape videos that we can send. The links, for example, coming from the SlideShare, there are already thousands of links that are ready in the Google, wherein we think that it's really applicable for the learning that we are going to impart on that day. The students can anytime open it as long as there is an internet. Okay? I am not really 100% in good faith whenever a parent or a student tells that we cannot afford any internet, we don't have money in the internet. Why not spend the travel expenses that you're going, or convert the money that you are supposed to use in traveling to school, so as using for the bond of the students, to the load that the students can use for mobile phone. 140 or even 100 is good for 1 week, and that is enough and even cheaper to the present consumption of money or budget, or the previous consumption of money and budget that the parents and the students were using. Next, what will be the benefits of the school if ever they're going to use transitional mode of learning? First is they can convert some allocated budget to invest in other factors like technology, trainings of the teachers, webinars. It is very useful these days, like this. We need not to have a face-to-face kind of seminar just to understand each other. A webinar is good. We can anytime go back whenever there are things that we do not understand. Unlike in the face-to-face seminar, that whenever there are things that we haven't heard, there are things that we haven't taken, or we have taken down note, or there are things that we already skipped. We cannot go back unless there's someone who's going to tell us, or unless we have the copy of the presentation that the speaker has. Now, if this is the kind of talk that we're going to have, it's easier for the audience to at least go back. Whenever there are things or certain parts that the person did not understand, I can easily just click the link that is provided in either the Facebook Live or YouTube Live or recorded video in the YouTube or in the StreamYard. It's easy for us to click and rewatch and relearn. Okay? Next, there are also disadvantages for the students. First is, not all students have internet access. Yes, I believe. But I've mentioned a while ago that there are solutions into that, like convert the previous budget that are usually used in traveling expenses and consumption of money for foods to the load of the students, and they can actually now surf to the net. If your problem is they don't want to use online, why where the students these days are fully immersing themselves in an unlimited chat every evening and unlimited browse in Facebook. So as with ML, I believe that a high percentage of students are having internet. I was a witness of that because I am a principal. That my students were actually junior high school, elementary, or senior high school. They were immersed actually, and they are still immersed in the ML now. So they cannot tell me that they cannot access in the internet because they are doing that. So why not tell them na instead of, it's just a matter of explaining and making them understand. It's just a matter of explaining it to them that instead of immersing yourselves into that, uh, why not use it in a proper way of learning? Next, not all students can 100% be attentive or can easily understand the lessons. It always depends on the approach of the teacher or how you're going to implement that. That's why there are trainings planned for the teachers so that students can understand the teachers, you know, how the teachers teach the lessons. It always depends on the approach on the in the trainings back up for the teachers. Next, there will be disadvantages for that, of course, for the students because there is always a term total development of persons. Yes, maybe there is a pandemic outbreak that we are facing, but how are we going still to cope with the pandemic outbreak if the students are not knowledgeable enough with the things that they need to know, and how will they understand things like protocols and and the natural scenario if they are not going to be educated, right? So these are the things, benefits, disadvantages that we are to encounter whenever we are to use transitional educational landscape or modality. I do suggest that we use transitional to answer that, to address the needs of the parents, to address the requests of the parents. This is in the safest place these days. We are in the safest mode. Putting students into online modality of learning. Remember, when we say online, it doesn't mean that you are always on a live mode. You can send videos, you can send links. Whenever we are on the online platform now, we are in the safest mode. Why? As I mentioned a while ago, students will not travel, parents will not travel, so as with the teacher, so there will be no close contact. Lesser possibility of being infected of coronavirus. Next, we will be having lesser budget to use. So I do suggest that we use transitional kind of learning. This seminar may be short. This seminar may be not as long as the usual seminars or webinars that I had, but I do assure you that all the factors that I need to tell you are here, right? I'm going to reschedule another webinar, and I'm going to coordinate with InstaBright with some plans that IATF, DepEd, and other agencies that are soon to release. These are the basic things that we need to know in reopening the classes using transitional kind of learning. Uh, anyway, don't forget to subscribe on the channel of InstaBright. There is a subscribe thing on the right part of it. Click. And whenever you would want to have a certificate, there is a link there. Click it. You have to pay 300 pesos for that. Thank you very much. This has been Professor Kibo Zia Casimiro. Good day.